Okay, we'll get started shortly. Just a heads up to everyone. So in the participants, there's a person named Send Private Questions here. That's just my iPad that's on the side. So when you have questions that you just want to send to me, you can send it up to that person. Or you can just send it to the everyone chat too. Nice, someone finished summer school. Okay, still some people joining. So we'll wait a few more minutes. And keep typing in the chat what you guys have been doing this summer. Nice, some people finish, more people finish summer school. Okay, seems like not many people are joining now, so we'll get started. Okay, hello everyone. Welcome to lesson number 4 for SALY, which is Science as a Lifestyle for Youth. Today we will be talking about buffalo, and then you'll see later on why I titled it Guy on the Buffalo. All right, let's get started. Okay, so today's topics is, first of all, we're going to talk all about buffalo. So you're going to learn what the ecology of buffalo are, what are the behaviors like, what are some basic scientific information about buffalo. And then we'll go into some historical and modern threats that buffalo have faced. Then we'll go into some conservation that has been made in the past and present to help preserve buffaloes. And then we'll go into some fun stuff that I'm excited to show you guys about Guy and a buffalo, which you guys will see what that means later on. And then lastly, we'll do a fun random buffalo fact Kahoot. Okay. So first of all, it's a common misnomer, which means calling by its wrong name. It's commonly like the American bison on the top. Many people call that a buffalo, which is incorrect because that is actually a bison, and buffalo actually live in Asia and Africa. So it's a common misnomer, which, as I said before, is when you call something the wrong name, but it's very common so people understand what you're talking about. So the correct name for this animal on the top is actually bison, and this animal on the bottom is buffalo, and buffalo live in Asia and bison live in North America. But, you know, it's okay if you call bison buffalo. We get what you mean, you know? Okay, so let's hop into some basic information about bison. So the common name is the American bison, and then the scientific name is bison. And that might sound a little weird, but it's called bison scientifically because the first name, bison, is the genus name, and then the second name is the species name. So if you think about humans, we're called Homo sapiens, right? So Homo is the genus name. It's like the bigger group of species that we're in. And then our specific species as humans is sapien. So we're Homo sapiens. So bison, there's not many different species in it, so it's just bison. And then the type is it's mammals. So they're mammals just like us, right? So their mothers produce milk, they have hair, they have live births, and they're warm-blooded, just like us. And then for a diet, they're herbivores. So if you remember before, herbivores are plant eaters. They eat plants. So they're grazers specifically. So they graze on different types of grasses and such like that. And then the group name is called a herd. So when you see a bunch of buffaloes together, it's a herd of buffalo. And then the average lifespan in the wild is 12 to 20 years. So it's about a fourth to a fifth of a normal human life. And then the size, buffalo are actually massive. Buffalo are the largest land mammal in all of North America. So their head and body is 7 to 11.5 feet, and their tail is 19.75 to 23.5 inches. So they can be up to like 11.5 feet tall, and they can weigh up to 2,200 pounds. So that's more than a ton. So if you look at this picture at the bottom, the size relative to a 6-foot man, you can see the buffalo is pretty massive. So you don't want to mess with buffalo. All right, so where do buffalo live? So as you can see on the far right, this is a diagram of buffalo where they roam long before Europeans came to America. So thousands and thousands of years ago. And you can see buffalo used to roam across the entire United States essentially, and into Canada too. So they roam basically across most of our country, and they're very common. And then in the late 1800s, as the US was expanding westward and people were settling out west, a lot of people were hunting buffalo for their hides and their tongues, and the buffalo were actually almost hunted to extinction. So as you can see, the roaming area of buffalo greatly decreased. And then finally, this diagram is from 2003, and let me see if anyone's in the way here. Okay, I think we're good. That's from 2003. And as you can see, there's not many places where the buffalo roam anymore. And there's a lot less buffalo, but we'll get into that a little later too. So what is the lifestyle of buffalo like, or bison? So their daily schedule consists of 2-hour periods of grazing, resting, cud chewing, and moving to a new grazing area. So basically all day, buffalo just eat grass, right? So grazing is just meaning they eat the grass, and then resting, and then cud chewing is, if you think of cows, you guys might know that cows have multiple stomachs, right? So basically when they chew it and eat it for the first time, it goes down to their stomach, then they rest for a little while. Then the food in their stomach actually comes back up to their mouth, and they chew it a second time, and then it goes back down to the stomach for the second time, which is pretty disgusting. And then after they do all that chewing, they just move to a new grazing area, and they do this all day long. So between all these grazing periods, they can move up to 2 miles per day. And then they mate for about at around 2 to 3 years old. And then you might see the horns on many of these buffalo, and you might think, what are these used for, right? So these horns are used for competing for mates. So the male buffaloes will fight each other to compete for a female bison. And it's also used to fight off predators like wolves or bears. And then they also live in massive herds. And they live in herds because it's almost as a defense mechanism, right? Because if you're a pack of wolves, you're much less likely to attack a huge herd of buffalo because you'll be completely outnumbered. And then these herds are also separated into male and female herds. So for most of the year, there's separate male herds and there's separate female herds. So they keep separate, and it's only until mating season that these two different herds actually combine together, and that's when the male and female buffalo will mate, actually. Okay, so now let's get into the ecology of buffalo and their impact on the food web. So they are a keystone species, and this basically means that they're very important and essential for their ecosystem, right? A lot of things on the ecosystem rely on bison. So if these bison, become endangered or get in really low numbers, then the entire ecosystem will suffer. Oh, sorry, I almost had to sneeze. Whew. Um, so let's talk a bit about specifically how they impact the food web and the ecosystem, right? So they live in prairies and the Great Plains, right? As I showed in the previous picture, right? In the middle of the United States, that's where a lot of open plains are, right? So obviously in these open plains, one of the main species is grasses. And if you ever if you look out to your lawn, it's mostly grasses. And grasses outcompete a lot of other plants. And grasses are very aggressive. So grasses can decrease the biodiversity of an area. And if you remember before, we talked about biodiversity. It's basically just how diverse the number of species are in an ecosystem. And you want a great diversity of many different species. And that is what a healthy ecosystem is like. So that way, if one species dies out, the entire ecosystem doesn't collapse. Oh. Disable annotation. Okay. And so now that we know that grasses outcompete other plants, buffalo obviously are grazers, so they eat a lot of the grasses. So buffalo actually help keep these grasses under control. So it gives the chance for other plant species to thrive and increase the diversity of the ecosystem. Okay, so someone asked, do bison live in Naperville? And as you've seen in the picture before, a long time ago, they were across the entire United States. But you know, in recent times, in the last couple hundreds of years, many bison were killed off. So there's not that many bison left in the wild anymore. So there's no wild bison in Naperville. But actually, if you go to Fermilab, which is only 30 minutes away, Fermilab actually has a herd of bison on their property. So if you ever visit Fermilab, which is a national laboratory, they actually have a herd of bison there. So you can go see them there. Okay, and then this is a little nasty, but actually bison droppings, so their waste, when they spread those droppings across the landscape, their droppings have a lot of nutrients from all the different plants that they eat. So their droppings kind of help spread the nutrients over the landscape. And if you ever heard that droppings are good fertilizer, it's actually pretty true. So their droppings help fertilize the land and create more nutrients in the land, which helps thrive other species. And someone asked, is it just poop? Yeah, it's just poop. Okay, and also buffalo help increase the abundance and diversity of birds and insects in tall grass prairies. And yeah, it's just because of all the things that they do with spreading nutrients and helping control different grasses. And then they also do a thing called wallowing, which is basically like when they like lie down and roll around, and they create this kind of like dent in the ground. And this kind of dent in the ground provides a lot of a habitat for a lot of different plants and animals that don't normally just roam in the open plains. You know, some animals and plants like to be a little more hidden. So these dents that these bison make in the ground, it provides a home for many plants and animals. Okay, now we're going to talk a little bit about the cultural importance of buffalo and bison. And obviously, the main one is about Native Americans. So the bison play a central role in many Plains Indians cultures. So the Plains Native Americans lived in about the middle of the United States, and they roamed the plains. And they were kind of, most of them were like a nomadic kind of group. So they had teepees and rode horses, and they basically just followed bison herds. because they relied on bison for a lot of parts of their lifestyle, from food to making tools to creating the bowstrings. And actually, their teepees, many of them were made out of buffalo hides. So they used every part of the bison in their way of life. Yeah, so they relied on buffalo for their lifestyle. So bison were like super important for their lifestyle. So as I said, they were nomadic. So they basically they just followed the bison as the bison grazed across the plains. And that's why they have teepees, because teepees are kind of like tents and they're easily moved. So that's why the Plains Indians had teepees, and that's why you often see bison associated with Native Americans, because they really revered bison, and in their religious culture too, they had a lot of symbols and important religious things about bison. Oh yeah, so someone asked, do people attack buffalo or bison? And as I'll get into a little later on, yes, they do. Actually, these Native Americans, they hunt bison, right? So bison, for the Native American culture, hunting bison is a big part of it. And but there's also a lot of people that weren't Native Americans that hunted bison in the late 1800s, and they did it for commercial reasons. They just wanted the buffalo for their hides and their tongues, and they basically didn't even want the meat or anything. So in the late 1800s, they killed so many buffalo and bison, and that was a really bad time, and we'll talk about that a little later. Um, and then someone said, yeah, and they also use bison hides for clothing. So they use every single part of a bison. And then do people eat bison? So obviously the Native Americans, they needed to eat it because that was their main, one of their main food sources. But actually, a lot of people nowadays are eating more bison because it's a really hardy animal and has a lot of meat. And there's actually a lot of domestic bison herds. And actually, there's a restaurant in downtown Naperville called Joe Montana Grill, I think. And I've eaten some bison steaks there before. And then someone asked, do bison attack humans? So bisons are herbivores, right? So they eat plants. So they don't go after humans. They don't try to attack humans. But sometimes you'll have people who have been hurt by bison because they're kind of intruding in the buffalo's territory. So if you ever see a bison, don't go too close to it. Don't try to pet it, and don't try to get in its personal space, because when bison see humans, or when a lot of animals see humans, they see humans as a predator, right? They see humans as an enemy and as a threat. So you don't want to get too close to bison or try to threaten them. Okay, so like I said before, bison were a sacred animal and religious symbol in Native American culture. And they were used in things like teepees, tools, bowstrings, sewing strings, and many other things as well. And they're actually the first official national mammal of the United States. So that's just a cool fact. Okay, so let's talk about some historical threats, which we already touched on a little bit. So if you refer and remember the picture I showed a while ago, from this diagram to this diagram, in the late 1800s, the grazing area of buffalo severely decreased. And this was because that in the late 1800s, bison almost went extinct because the many settlers and European Americans that were settling in the East, during this time, they were moving westward. So if you remember playing like the Oregon Trail, or if you remember like Western movies or like cowboys, right? That's kind of representative of the United States moving westward. So as many European and American citizens were moving westward, they were killing a lot of buffalo and bison because, first of all, these European Americans, they hunted with guns and horses, right? So obviously it's a lot easier to kill bison with a gun than with a bow and arrow, which a lot of the Native Americans used to use. And they also provided these guns to Native Americans, so the Native Americans were killing them at a much higher rate. And the sad thing is that they would usually only kill the bison for their hides, which is like their fur and their skin. That's what like teepees are made of, their hides, right? And for their tongues. So they would basically just take the hide and the tongue and then just leave the buffalo carcass and leave the buffalo body there just to rot. So they were wasting a big part of the buffalo, and they were killing so many buffalo. As you see in this picture, those are all buffalo skulls that were about to be grinded up for other uses later. But you can just see how many thousands and thousands of buffalo were being killed. So if you look at this chart or this table on the right, you can see pre-1800, there were maximum like 30 to 60 million bison, 30 to 60 million. But as you see, after each decade in the 1800s, they went from 60 million, 40 million, all the way up to 5 million, and then within 10 years, less than 400,000. And then actually by the 1890s and to the 1900s, there were only less than 1,000 bison left. So they went from 60 million to less than 1,000. To give you a scale, like the population of like New York City is like 8-9 million, right? Well, the bison, there's like 6 times more than that. 6-7 times more than the population of everyone in New York City. And then they went from that all the way to less than 1,000. That's probably less than how many people go to your school. So that just shows you how drastic the hunting and how severe the depopulation of these bison were. And this was a huge problem. These bison almost went extinct. And then due to some conservation efforts in the 1900s and into the 2000s, the buffalo population slowly grew and recovered a little bit. And we'll get into how exactly were these conservationists able to help recover the bison population. So let's go into the recovery. Okay. So buffalo, the first thing is whenever you have a problem, the first number one step is to recognize that you have a problem. So in early American history, there wasn't such a thing as classifying something as endangered. There wasn't these protections for animals, right? But then when you get into the early 1900s, especially with like President Theodore Roosevelt, these environmentalists and animal advocates started pushing for more government regulation to protect animals. So the first step is to classify buffalo and other species as endangered species, which means that they're in danger of becoming extinct and being wiped out completely, right? So, and when you classify something as an endangered species, they're a protected species. So, like, you can't hunt it extensively, right? And there's certain regulations and laws. It's just like how bald eagles are a protected species. So you can't just kill a bunch of bald eagles, right? And then one of the main reasons why the buffalo and bison were able to recover is because of a lot of public and private conservation efforts. So what they did, a lot of zoos like the Bronx Zoo and a lot of conservationists, they helped take some buffalo from the wild and relocate it to their zoos where they could help replenish the populations a little bit. And then they brought these bison to protected lands. Like if you think of like Yosemite National Park, that's a protected land, right? So it's protected against like buildings and construction being done there. It's a natural land, right? Let me check the chat. Oh, sorry. Okay. And yeah, so bringing them to these protected lands really helped the bison population recover. And today, there are about 500,000 American bison in existence. But that number can be misleading. Like in this chart over here, it says like 360,000. But many of those bison are actually in domestic herds, like, you know, like cattle herds, right? Many of them are in like domestic herds or in like zoos or things like that. And actually only 20,000 bison are actually truly wild and free roaming today. So if you hear a number like there's 500,000 bison, that's not completely accurate because only 20,000 are truly wild, right? So there's, compared to 60 million before the 1800s, 20,000 is a lot less, right? Okay, and so just to give you perspective, there's only 20,000 in the wild, and so there's only 5 free-ranging plains bison herds and 8 wood bison herds. So wood bison and plains bison are just different types of bison based off where they like to live, right? Okay, so let's get into some modern threats that bison are facing. So first of all, okay, yeah. So first of all, as we'll get into a little later, bison have recovered a lot and they're not endangered anymore. They're actually near threatened now. But there's still some threats that bison face. And the first is genetic diversity. So because, like I mentioned, there's only 20,000 in the wild and there's only like a handful of herds out there, this causes some issues with the genetic diversity. Because as you learn in like biology in freshman year, genetic diversity is very important for the success of a species. Because genetic diversity is how species evolve and how they improve and how they, I guess, deal with changes and continue to thrive. But because there's small herds, there's not many different mating options. So what happens is there's a lot of inbreeding, and this causes a lack of genetic diversity, which can cause mutations, different diseases, and all around it's just not healthy for the species and for the herd, right? Okay, and then they also have habitat loss. As you guys are all probably aware of, there's a lot more industrialization going on nowadays, right? Different companies and commercial sectors are expanding into these plains and creating construction projects, which is creating less and less and less available grazing lands for these bison. And bison, like especially in these huge herds, they travel 2 miles a day. They need a lot of grazing land in order to really thrive. But a lot of this land is being taken over because of obviously industrialization and commercial sectors expanding, but also mainly due to there being more commercial cattle, right? Like so cows, a lot more farms and like ranches, right? They have a lot more commercial cattle in these plains, and these cattle take up the land that used to be the bison's land. So you have a habitat loss. These bison have less and less grazing land. And so, as I said before, only 20,000 are left in the wild. So what are people doing nowadays to help protect buffalo? So one of the things that different groups like the World Wildlife Fund are helping doing is preserving genetically important buffalo DNA and buffalo. Like if there's especially a good, very good genetic buffalo herd, they help isolate it and protect it and to protect it from them breeding with like different cattle or things like that, and protecting the genetic DNA, right? To help increase the diversity. And then also a major effort is preserving land and creating national parks So it helps protect the habitats of these bison herds from different cattle's or industrialization to take over their habitats, right? And so one of the major habitats and areas that bison live in, and actually the largest wild buffalo bison herd is in Yellowstone National Park. Um, and so as you can see over here, this is just like different classifications that show how threatened a species is to extinction. So on the left, you have least concern. So that means the species isn't really that threatened. And then on the far right is they're completely extinct. So right now, bison are near threatened. So they're no longer severely endangered like they were in the past. And their current population trend is stable, which is good and shows there are some pretty good and impactful conservation efforts going on nowadays. But it doesn't mean that we can become complacent and not protect these animals still. Okay, so right now we're about halfway. So I'm gonna have you guys take a little 5-minute break. So just come back by 1:37, and then we'll go into some games and some other activities. So you guys can turn off your videos for now and just be back by 1:37. All right. Okay, so it's been 5 minutes now. So hopefully all of you guys are back now.
Yep. Oh!
Okay. Please make sure you're muted. All right. Okay, we're just gonna give a little bit to make sure everyone is able to get back now.
Huh?
Okay, and a lot of you don't have your video on right now, so if you can put your video back on, that's how I know you're back from the break.
Okay.
It seems like a lot of people are back now. Okay, let's get started again. Okay, so we just left off talking about the different threats and conservation efforts going on with bison. And so now let's get into some fun stuff. So now you guys know the basics about buffalo and what's going on with them. So let's do some fun stuff. All right. So in this picture is this man riding a bison, and his name is Guinn. And he is called the guy on the buffalo because he rides bison, which is I think it's pretty amazing. And so basically, he did a lot of different conservation and wildlife work, and in between him and his crew filming different things for other companies, they actually created a movie called Buffalo Rider. And this was a movie made in the 70s, so it kind of has like a Western feel. And it was based off Buffalo Jones, who in the late 1800s helped buffalo conservation efforts. And if you remember, in the late 1800s, a lot of bison were being hunted down. So Buffalo Jones did a lot of work to help buffalo conservation. So basically, this movie made in the 70s, recently in the 2013, this band from Austin, Texas, decided to make a music video series using clips from this movie. So we're gonna now watch some of these music video clips. All right. And let me just make sure everything is optimized. Optimize here. Okay, it should be good now. Okay, let me know if you guys can hear this.
One day the guy on the buffalo hopped off to stretch his legs, walking the field. Hey, what's this in the weeds? It's a baby. Awesome. He put it in a...
So this video is pretty random. So he just found a baby just in the weeds, in the grass, just randomly.
Saddle, hopped on, humped it up a hill and across the plain, tried to cross a river.
So at this point, he's about to try to cross a river. Now, type in the chat if you think it's a good idea to cross a river while you're on a bison. Yeah, so some people are saying no, so let's see what happens, all right?
Not gonna happen, man. You're riding on a buffalo, member, but keep the baby afloat. Get your guy on a buffalo.
Yeah, so he basically just tried and failed to cross a river while riding a buffalo and having a baby on the saddle.
Oh, gotta find your friend. She's Paris, guy on a buffalo. Hey, you want this baby? It's cheaper than a
So he just gave the baby he found to one of his random friends because that's what you do with your friends. You just give them babies that you found on the ground.
Oh, you're welcome, lady. Gotta move it on to my buffalo. Got on a buffalo one day.
So at this point, the guy in the buffalo just decides to, hop off and go for a quick deer hunt. And someone asked who made these. So this guy is Guinn, which is the guy we just talked about in the previous slide. So they just made a low budget movie by themselves, him and a couple of his other friends. So they had a small camera crew, and they just made a random movie.
The guy
So he's going on a hunt right
walked
now.
off to do some hunting. The buffalo said, "No, don't do it, man, by yourself." God said, "I got this. I don't need you, buffalo. It's just a deer." And normally the buffalo would have his back, but he was chomping on some grass in the field. And just about the time the guy got ready to shoot, he straight up got mauled by a cougar. Where's my...
So keep in mind, all the animal stunts in this are real. So he's actually riding a real buffalo, and he just got attacked by an actual cougar. So a real cougar just attacked him.
Buffalo, when I meet him, oh, he's got problems of his own, understand? Hey, guy on a buffalo, he's gonna have to just punch that cougar in the face. Get out of here, kitty cat, beat it.
But the guy in the buffalo isn't scared of any cougar, so he just punches the cougar and it runs away. That's pretty
Hey,
amazing.
wolf, I got something for you. It's a kick from Buffalo. Hey, varmints, don't mess with the guy that's riding on Buffalo. Don't do it.
So there's actually 4 of these videos, and they're just like some pretty goofy videos. So I just wanted you guys to have some fun, and I love these videos. I think they're pretty funny. So type in the chat if you are a Guy in a Buffalo fan now. It's okay if you're not. Okay, hey, we got some yeses, all right. So now we are going to get into a fun Buffalo Kahoot, okay? Buffalo.
Stop.
Oh, what? You can type a chat to me.
Stop.
If you have some issues, you can just type a message to me. Okay. Alright, okay, let's get started. Okay, you guys ready? So the first question is, what is the weight of the heaviest wild bison on record? Okay, so it's okay if you didn't get it right. Yeah, they're just random questions. But 2,800 pounds, that's like about the average weight of a car. So that's pretty heavy. Okay, congratulations, E. So what is a bison's top speed? So how fast can a bison go? So bison can actually go pretty fast, even though they can weigh up to 2,800 pounds. They can still run almost 40 miles per hour, which is like a car, right? So it's pretty insane. Okay, Lei, I see you, Lei. So, how long is a bison pregnancy? Okay, people got it right. So it's 283 days. Wow, okay. Okay, Lay. So what is a bison's max vertical jump? Okay, some people got it right. So a bison's max vertical jump is actually 6 feet. So often you can see them hopping over some pretty tall fences. So even though these bison seem like they're huge and not athletic, they're actually very athletic. Okay, Lay. I don't know how you're getting all of these right, but okay. So what do you call a bison, buffalo, cow mix? So if you have a cow and a buffalo, what would that be called? So, there's actually two common names. It's either a catalo, because cows are called like cattle, right? Or a beefalo. Okay, Lay. This is a little suspicious, but okay, good job. So what did the father buffalo say to his child after the child flew off as Did he say, bye, son? Don't forget to buy some lunch? Have a great day, or you're so buff.
What is this?
Okay. No, this is just some jokes. So what is faster than a bison?
You're muted.
Okay, so as we mentioned before, the peak of bison populations were 30 to 60 million. Okay, so in third place we have pie, second place we have PogChamp, and first place okay, and then we have Justin and whatever that is for runners up. Okay, so good job everyone. I hope you had fun today. So you can type in the chat real quick. One fact that you learned today. Just anything you learned today. You can type it in the chat. So type in the chat one fact that you learned today. It could be anything, or you can send a message to me. Okay. Right, yeah. So some people learned about their daily schedule, like eating and resting. Some people didn't know that buffalo were so athletic and can run that fast or jump that high. Yeah, or that they can be bison. So a common mistake, actually, what we know as buffalo are actually called bison, but it's okay to call it buffalo too. Yeah, so hopefully you guys learned a lot. Thank you for coming out today. I hope you had some fun watching Guinn of Buffalo, learning about buffaloes and playing that Kahoot. Thank you guys all for coming out, and I hope you have a good day. You can exit the meeting now.
Bye.
All right, bye.
Bye.
Bye, everyone.
Bye. Thank you.
Bye.
Bye.
Bye, everyone.
Bye.
Thanks.
Thanks.